She walked barefoot into the hotel lobby, hair matted, eyes vacant. No name, no memory. The staff laughed. They saw a stray. But a kind single dad saw something else. He offered her a chair, a towel, and a haircut. What he didn't know, she was the richest CEO in America, about to fall deeply in love with the man who gave her back her dignity. If stories of kindness, love, and second chances move your heart, you're in the right place. Take a moment to subscribe and join us as we uncover one of the most unexpected love stories you'll ever hear. Now, let's begin. The rain had been falling for hours. Not hard, but steady, like a quiet apology from the sky. Outside the grand revolving doors of the Carlton West Hotel, where every brick shimmered with wealth and power, a young woman crouched beneath the awning, soaked through, barefoot and trembling. She didn't look homeless in the usual sense. She looked lost, completely and utterly lost. Her hair hung in heavy matted strands over her face. Her jeans were torn, her sweater too thin for the cold. But the most startling thing wasn't her appearance. It was her eyes. Wide, vacant, and searching like a child, separated from her mother in a crowd. Every sound, the screech of a car, the whoosh of an umbrella snapping open, made her flinch. People passed her without stopping. A few looked. Most didn't. Inside the hotel lobby, manager Douglas Brenner stood with arms crossed and irritation building. "She's been out there nearly an hour," he muttered to the concierge. "Somebody call security." The concierge. A young man named Brian shifted uncomfortably. "I tried speaking to her earlier. She doesn't respond." "Just whimpers," Brenner scoffed. "God's sake, she's scaring guests. We've got a tech gala in 4 hours, and I don't need this kind of drama." Without waiting, he pushed through the door, umbrella in hand. The woman flinched at his approach. "Ma'am," he said, with the robotic courtesy of someone who had long since stopped caring. "You can't stay here. This is private property. I'll have to ask you to move along." She didn't move, didn't speak, only clutched her knees tighter to her chest, like the world was too big and she was too small to survive in it. His voice sharpened. "Ma'am, did you hear me?" When she still didn't respond, Brenner reached forward to tap her shoulder. "Please don't touch her," said a calm voice behind him. He turned, umbrella still raised, to find a man and a little girl standing quietly under their own shared umbrella. The man wore a worn army green jacket over jeans and a faded white apron, the kind restaurant workers wore. His boots were scuffed, his hands were rough, but his eyes were steady and kind, even as rain streamed down his face. His name was Jack Carter. Beside him, holding the umbrella's handle with both hands, was Mia, his 7-year-old daughter. A delicate figure with freckles, curious eyes, and a sense of calm far beyond her years. "I work maintenance here," Jack added. "But I'm not speaking to you as staff. I'm speaking to you as a human being. Please, step back." Brenner bristled. "Mr. Carter, this doesn't concern." "It does." Jack interrupted gently but firmly. Then he knelt. Right there on the wet pavement, he knelt beside the girl, close enough to share Mia's umbrella, but not close enough to frighten her. "It's okay," he said softly. "We're not here to hurt you. You're safe." The woman glanced sideways. Her lip quivered. Her fingers clutched her sweater tighter, as if holding on to the last thread of her identity. Jack didn't push. He simply looked over his shoulder and nodded once. Mia stepped forward. From her small backpack, she pulled out a simple wooden comb, worn from use, with Mia carved into the handle in a child's crooked handwriting. She held it out with both hands. "You can have this," she said quietly. "It helps when I'm scared. Maybe it'll help you too." The woman blinked, Slowly, achingly slowly, she reached out her trembling hand and took it. No one spoke. Not Brenner, not Jack, not even Mia. Because in that moment, something cracked inside the girl's eyes. Not fully. Not yet. But enough for a shimmer of something to return. Not memory, but maybe the sense that she wasn't invisible anymore. Jack stood taking off his jacket and draping it gently around her shoulders. "She can stay in the back room for now," he said to Brenner without waiting for permission. "It's warm, quiet. No one will bother her." "You'll get written up for this," Brenner muttered. Jack looked at him not angrily. "Just tired. I've been written up for worse. But I sleep better when I help people." 10 minutes later, Jack, Mia, and the nameless woman sat in the supply room behind the hotel's maintenance wing. He handed her a dry towel and gestured to a chair. "If it's okay, I can help you untangle your hair a bit. I used to cut my wife's hair, and Mia's too." The woman nodded slowly. Jack pulled out his barber kit, a relic from his days in the Navy, and began working gently, combing through knots with patience, never speaking unless she looked at him first. Mia sat on a nearby bench, drawing something in her notebook. A smiling face, long hair, a little girl, and beside them, a man with kind eyes and scissors in his hand. That night, after the woman fell asleep on a cot with Mia's stuffed bear tucked under her arm, Jack finally exhaled. He didn't know who she was, but he had a feeling deep in his bones that whoever she used to be, her story wasn't over yet. And maybe, just maybe, his wasn't either. The next morning the rain was gone, but the sky still hung low and gray, like the world was holding its breath. Inside the small break room at the back of Carlton West, the silence was soft, not heavy, the kind that wrapped itself around the people inside like a wool blanket. The woman was still asleep on the cot, curled under Jack's extra jacket, the wooden comb Mia had given her resting on the small table beside her. Mia sat cross-legged on the floor, humming gently as she colored in a drawing of the woman with smoother hair, brighter eyes, and a soft smile. The girl had always believed that sometimes when words fail, pictures can speak for us. She was drawing hope one crayon stroke at a time. Jack stood by the small sink, filling an old bowl with warm water. He added a few drops of lavender soap, his late wife's favorite, and stirred it gently, letting the scent fill the room. He wasn't trying to fix her, this woman who hadn't spoken a word. He wasn't looking for answers. He just wanted her to feel like a person again. When she stirred, it wasn't with panic. Not this time. She blinked against the dim light, then looked at the small figure of Mia, who gave her a soft wave. And then her eyes found Jack, his calm presence steadying the room. "You're safe," Jack said simply, his voice low. "You slept through the night. That's a good sign." She didn't answer, but her eyes didn't dart away like before. That to Jack was enough. He set the bowl on the table and pulled over a clean towel. "If you'd let me," he said gently, "I'd like to help untangle your hair a bit. It might feel better." There was a pause. Then she gave the smallest nod. Jack didn't smile. He never wanted her to feel like she owed him anything. But there was something softer in the way he moved, with reverence, like he was being allowed to touch something fragile. He took out the wooden comb first. "It's Mia's favorite," he said, showing it to her again. "She only gives it to people she likes. That's a big deal, trust me." Mia giggled from the corner, but didn't interrupt. She kept coloring her small legs swinging under the chair. Jack dipped the comb into the warm water, then gently began at the ends of her hair, slowly working through the knots. He took his time. Every stroke was patient, deliberate, respectful. As if each tangle he cleared was more than just hair, it was pain, fear, shame, confusion. Her shoulders trembled at first, but not from cold. Eventually they relaxed. He didn't ask her name. He didn't ask where she was from, or who she was running from, or why her hands kept clenching the edge of the chair when the wind rustled outside. Instead, he spoke of quiet things. "I used to do this for my wife," he said after a while. "She said it was the only time she could stop thinking. I think the rhythm of it, you know. It slows the noise down." The woman looked up for just a moment. Her eyes were misty, but there was the tiniest flicker of recognition, not of herself, but of something long lost. A feeling. Jack took that as permission to continue. "My daughter Mia. She's got more kindness in her pinky finger than I had in my whole 20s. When her mom passed, I thought I'd have to teach her how to be okay. Turns out she taught me instead." From the corner, Mia added brightly, "I'm good at hugs and pancakes." The woman gave a sound that was almost a laugh, just a short exhale through her nose. But Jack caught it. I heard that he said with mock seriousness, "You laughed. You're officially part of the family now." This time her eyes dropped in shy amusement. She didn't push the comb away. When the hair was fully detangled, Jack took out a clean towel and gently patted it dry. Then he picked up his old military-issued scissors, their silver dulled from years of use. He looked at her once more, waiting for a nod. She gave it. The first cut was silent, just the whisper of blades through strands of hair. Then another, and another. Jack moved with the certainty of someone who had learned the value of touch, the power of small rituals. Each snip felt like releasing a burden she hadn't even known she was carrying. Mia watched, still drawing whispering to herself, as she added stars around the woman's new hair. When he finished, Jack stepped back, not to admire, but to give her space. He held up a small mirror, the only one in the room. She looked at herself. Her breath hitched. It wasn't that she suddenly remembered her name, or her past, but for the first time in what felt like forever, she saw a face that looked human, present, dignified. A tear slipped down her cheek. Jack handed her a clean tissue. Still no questions. "Only this, you did great." Later, as she drank warm tea with both hands wrapped around the mug, like it was an anchor, she looked at Jack with a new kind of clarity. She opened her mouth, and for the first time she spoke. "Thank you." 2 words, raspy, barely audible, but real. Jack nodded, eyes soft. "You're welcome," and Mia whispered, "Told you she could talk." They all laughed, awkward, gentle, unpolished. The kind of laughter that doesn't fix anything, but makes the silence less heavy. And outside, the clouds began to part, just enough for a little light to slip in. Jack's apartment was on the 3rd floor of a weathered walk-up 2 blocks from the hotel. The building was old, the carpet in the hallway worn thin, and the stairwell had a faint scent of dust and coffee. But the walls were clean, the plants on the windowsill were alive, and the door to Unit 3C was always unlocked when Mia was home. Inside, the space was simple but warm, a place built not with money, but with care. Faded family photos in handmade frames lined the shelf. A pair of ballet shoes hung beside a hand-drawn calendar that said Mia's important days in pink crayon. The kitchen table had only 2 chairs, but Jack quietly pulled out a folded stool from the closet and placed it at the end, then gestured for the woman to sit. She hesitated in the doorway. No one had invited her inside a home in a very long time. Not like this. Not with calm eyes and steady hands, and a child who offered her half a peanut butter sandwich like it was a sacred gift. Mia patted the spot next to her on the couch. "You can sit here. That's usually my stuffed bear's spot, but he said he's okay sitting on the floor today." The woman blinked, then sat. She still didn't speak much, but her eyes didn't dart around the room like they had in the hotel. She was starting to feel less afraid. Jack turned on a small electric kettle. "Hope you like chamomile. Mia says it's the best tea for people who are sad, but don't know why." "I saw it on YouTube," Mia chimed in, mouthful of bread. "And it smells like sleepy flowers." The woman smiled. A real one this time. Small, but full. Jack caught it, and without saying a word, reached into a drawer and pulled out a clean t-shirt and sweatpants, folded them neatly. "You can use the shower. Fresh towels are under the sink. Take your time. Mia and I will start dinner." She took the clothes with both hands. Her lip trembled, but she held it together. The bathroom was tiny but spotless. The mirror above the sink was fogged over from the last time Jack had showered, and she didn't wipe it clean. She didn't want to see herself yet. She stepped under the water and let the warmth run down her spine, rinsing away more than just dirt. It was like layers of confusion and fear melted slowly, one at a time. She ran her fingers through her freshly cut hair, and for the first time since the accident, whenever that had been, she didn't flinch at her own touch. Dinner was nothing fancy, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, but it tasted like something sacred, something earned. Jack didn't ask questions. Mia did enough talking for all of them, telling stories about her second-grade teacher, how she once tried to give the mailman a cupcake for being the bravest person ever, and how she was learning to whistle, but could only manage a sad snake sound so far. The woman listened quiet, but engaged eyes moving from Mia to Jack, and back again, like she was slowly figuring out what safety looked like. That night, Jack offered her his room, but she insisted on the couch. He laid out an extra blanket. Mia brought her a small, stuffed unicorn. "Its name is Cloudy," she whispered. "He helps people sleep without bad dreams." The woman took it like it was made of glass. Her eyes shone, but she didn't let the tears fall. "Good night, Miss Sunshine," Mia said sleepily, curling up in her own room. Jack paused before turning off the lamp. "That's what Mia has been calling you. Hope you don't mind." The woman looked down at the unicorn in her lap. "No," she whispered. I don't mind." It was sometime after midnight when the nightmare came. Muffled screams, gasping, a crash. Jack was out of bed in seconds. He rushed into the living room to find the woman on the floor, tangled in the blanket, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. She clawed at the air like something invisible was trying to take her. Hey, it's okay," Jack said gently, kneeling beside her, but not touching her yet. "You're safe. You're at my place, remember?" Her eyes were wide, lost. "It's just a dream," he said again. "Nothing's going to hurt you here." From the hallway, Mia peeked out, eyes sleepy. She held up Cloudy the unicorn and walked over. "Maybe he got scared too," she said softly. "But you can hold him. He's brave." Jack let Mia place the unicorn into the woman's hands. Slowly, her fingers closed around it. Her breathing slowed. Her shoulders relaxed. Jack helped her sit up, then offered her a glass of water. She took it with both hands. "I don't remember," she said in a hoarse whisper. "Who I am. Where I'm from. Why I keep seeing fire." Jack didn't flinch. He just nodded. "You don't have to remember everything tonight," he said. "You just have to remember this. You're not alone." And for the first time since she appeared on that cold sidewalk, the woman nodded back. By the time morning sunlight filtered through the windows, Jack found the couch empty. Panic shot through him. But then he saw her in the kitchen barefoot, wearing Mia's world's best dad apron, trying to make toast. She looked up, a little embarrassed, but smiling. Jack grinned. "Careful. That toaster bites." She shrugged, lifting the butter knife like a sword. "I've survived worse." They both laughed, light, hesitant, but real. And somewhere deep inside her, something stirred. She still didn't know her name, still didn't know her past. But in this little apartment with a kind man and his extraordinary daughter, she was beginning to remember how it felt to be human again. By Tuesday morning, the Carlton West Hotel was already buzzing. Not from the usual conference prep or dinner service coordination, but from something much more potent in tightly wound professional spaces. Curiosity dressed in gossip. "She's living with Carter now, isn't she?" whispered Marta from housekeeping, passing a tray of clean towels to a younger maid. "He found her outside the hotel," I heard the girl replied. "She wasn't even wearing shoes. Maybe she's his cousin." Another offered. "Please," Marta scoffed. "You've seen how he looks at her. That's no cousin." Jack Carter, however, was too busy filling ice machines and fixing a broken radiator in room 214 to pay much attention. He'd worked at Carlton West for 3 years. People talked. Then they got bored. Then they found something else to whisper about. He was fine with that. What mattered was that Emily, as Mia had started calling her more often now, was safe, and she was healing. He knew it was a strange arrangement. A man brings a woman with no memory home to live with his daughter. It would sound crazy to most people, but for Jack, it was simple. She needed kindness. We had it to give. Back at the apartment, Emily was making progress, though she'd never admit it aloud. She had cleaned the entire kitchen without being asked. She had figured out how to get the old coffee maker to brew without leaking. And much to Mia's delight, she had taught the girl how to fold fitted sheets like a hotel maid. The skill seemed to come from instinct, but there were gaps, sharp, hollow spaces in her mind she couldn't access. Once, while setting the table, she caught sight of herself in the oven's reflective glass. Something about the way she moved, the way her hand held the spoon. A fleeting déjà vu. It was like her body remembered things her brain hadn't yet caught up to. Later that afternoon, she walked Mia to school, a routine. Jack had insisted she didn't have to do, but she'd wanted to. The school was only a few blocks away. The air was crisp, the leaves a mix of gold and rust. Mia chattered the whole way. Emily found herself smiling, nodding along, laughing, when Mia described a boy in her class who had tried to eat glue because it looked like frosting. When they reached the school gate, Mia paused and turned serious. "Are you going to leave?" she asked suddenly. "When you remember who you are." Emily crouched to her level, surprised by the question. I don't know," she said honestly. "Would you be sad if I did?" Mia nodded. "A little, but I'd understand." Then Mia reached into her backpack and pulled out something small, a folded piece of paper. "This is my drawing of you," she said, shy now. "It's who I think you are." Emily unfolded it. A woman with short hair standing in front of a big sun. Behind her, a child smiling. And beside her, a man holding scissors and a heart-shaped balloon. Emily blinked fast, fighting the emotion rising in her chest. "Thank you," she whispered, pressing the paper to her heart. That evening, Jack came home with an extra bag of groceries and a grin. "You made the news," he said casually. Emily blinked. I did what Jack pulled out his phone, tapped a video, and handed it to her. It was a local channel, a clip from a press conference held by Ava Lynn Technologies, one of the country's leading tech firms in healthcare AI. Still no word from CEO Ava Lynn, who's been missing for nearly 3 weeks following a reported boating accident off the Connecticut coast. While authorities continue to search, board members have assured investors that operations remain stable. The screen showed a picture, a headshot of a woman in a navy blue suit, poised, confident, intelligent. Sharp cheekbones, focused eyes. Emily froze. Her own eyes widened. Because she knew that face. Or rather, she knew the feeling of that face. It was the same as the one she saw in flashes standing before glass boardrooms, giving instructions, speaking into microphones, holding the future in her hand. The woman on screen was her. Jack saw the color drain from her face. "You okay?" Emily didn't answer right away. She sat down slowly, phone still in her hand, eyes glued to the paused frame. I think she whispered, "I might be her." Jack leaned against the counter. Not surprised, only quiet. "You don't have to know right now," he said. "Just because the world says something, it doesn't mean you have to rush toward it." Emily looked up at him. "But what if I have responsibilities? A company, a family?" Jack met her gaze with steady calm. "You also have a little girl's drawing on your fridge, a cup of tea in your hand. A second chance, maybe." Silence settled between them, not heavy but thoughtful. That night, long after Mia went to bed, Emily stood in the hallway, staring at her own reflection in the living room window. This time she didn't look away. The name Ava Lynn echoed in her mind, distant but undeniable. But here in this apartment with a girl who gave her drawings and a man who never once asked her to be anything more than human, she wasn't sure which identity she wanted to return to. All she knew was, when Jack cut her hair, he didn't change who she was. He helped her feel worthy enough to find out. Emily had trouble sleeping that night. Not because of fear, but because of clarity. Lying on the couch beneath the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant rhythm of city sounds, she stared at the ceiling and tried to reconcile two truths: the woman on the television and the woman holding Mia's crayon, drawing to her chest like it was a passport back into something real. The second one felt more believable. By morning, Mia had already packed her school bag and was attempting to braid her hair in the hallway mirror. "I'm doing a French braid," she said proudly. "Miss Carter, me learned it on YouTube." Emily chuckled softly. "That's very international of you." Jack emerged from the kitchen holding 2 travel mugs of coffee. One he offered to Emily without a word. The other he sipped carefully while packing Mia's lunch. There was something so natural, so quiet and practiced in his movements, like all of this was second nature. Emily watched as he folded Mia's sandwich into parchment paper, tucked in a post-it note, with a hand-drawn smiley face, then slipped it gently into the brown paper bag. "You do this every day?" she asked. Jack didn't look up. "Yep, started when she was 5. She used to cry if I didn't put a drawing in." Mia piped up, "I still cry if he forgets." Jack winked. Emily smiled, but behind her amusement was a growing ache. How long had it been since anyone prepared anything for her with that much care? Had she ever even paused long enough to do it for someone else? After Mia left for school, Jack returned to the kitchen. Emily stood nearby, still holding her coffee, unsure what to do next. "You okay?" Jack asked. She nodded, then paused. "You know, you never once asked me about myself." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You don't want me to. But aren't you curious?" she pressed. "I could be anyone. I could be trouble." Jack set down the dish towel and leaned against the counter. Arms folded, not guarded. Just calm. "I don't help people because I want something from them," he said. "I help them because I've been helped in ways I can never repay. By strangers. By one nurse in Afghanistan who stayed with me during a panic attack. By a kid who handed me half his sandwich when I hadn't eaten in 2 days. I believe kindness is the only thing that survives after everything else fades." Emily stared at him. It wasn't just what he said. It was the way he said it. Like it wasn't meant to impress or convince. Like it was simply the truth, hammered into his bones through seasons of pain and quiet service. "So no," he added. "I don't care who you were. I care who you are. In here." He tapped his chest. "And so far, I like what I see." Emily felt tears burning unexpectedly behind her eyes. She looked away. "You have this annoying habit," she mumbled. Jack tilted his head. "Yeah, of saying exactly what someone needs to hear." Jack smiled. "That's Mia's fault. She says I've been trained well." Later that day, while Jack was at work, Emily ventured outside alone for the first time. She wasn't sure why she did it. Maybe because the apartment was starting to feel too comfortable, and comfort when you're not used to it can feel like a warning. She walked the streets slowly, hands tucked into the pockets of Jack's old army jacket. The fabric was worn but warm, like everything else about him. She passed a bakery, a park bench, a playground where children shrieked with laughter and swung toward the sky with reckless faith. At one corner, she stopped at a bookstore window. Inside, a display featured business bestsellers, including one she recognized. Her own name on the cover. She stared at it, heart thudding. Ava Lynn Reinventing Healthcare Through AI and Empathy. The photo on the back jacket was stiff, corporate distant. She turned away. That wasn't her right now. Maybe that had never been her. When Jack returned home that evening, Emily was making dinner. It wasn't fancy, just pasta with jarred sauce and some garlic bread from the corner market. But it was hers. A gift. A thank you. Mia gasped when she walked in. "You cooked. That's amazing, Daddy." "She cooked." Jack looked at the table, then at Emily. "Trying to steal my job, huh?" She shrugged, suddenly shy. "I thought maybe I could do something for you, for both of you." Jack didn't say anything, just stepped closer and placed a hand on her shoulder. It was the first time he touched her uninvited, and it wasn't romantic or possessive. It was a gesture of respect, gratitude, maybe even healing. After dinner, as they sat on the couch watching an old black and white movie with too many dramatic violins, Mia drifted to sleep against Emily's side. Jack rose quietly to get a blanket, draping it over them both. Then he sat across from them, in the armchair, sipping tea. Emily looked at him across the room. "I went out today," she said softly. "Saw a book with my name on it." Jack nodded. "How'd it feel?" "Like looking at a stranger who used to live in my bones." He said nothing. Then she added, "But I also saw a little girl in a red jacket giving her cookie to a boy who dropped his. And I thought, that's the kind of world I want to live in, where people do that." Jack gave the smallest smile. "Then you're in the right place." Emily looked down at Mia curled against her hand, still loosely holding the wooden comb. She still didn't know who she'd been. But in this little living room with garlic breadcrumbs on the floor, a VHS movie playing too loud, and a girl who trusted her enough to fall asleep without fear, she was beginning to know who she wanted to become. The apartment was quiet that night. Not the awkward kind of silence that makes people fidget, but the kind that feels earned, like the house itself was exhaling after a long, full day. Emily stood at the sink, rinsing the last of the dinner dishes. The kitchen light buzzed softly above her. Jack was in the other room, sifting through a box he kept tucked beneath the couch. Old letters, tools, bits of soldering wire, and a harmonica wrapped in a faded handkerchief. Mia had already fallen asleep curled up in her favorite blanket fort, made of 2 chairs, and a quilt stitched with stars. The scene could have belonged to anyone, any ordinary evening in any quiet household. But for Emily, it was the closest thing to peace she'd known in, well, as far back as her fractured memory would allow. Jack returned with the harmonica, sitting at the edge of the armchair, elbows resting on his knees. He turned the instrument over in his hands, running a thumb along its edges. I haven't played this in a while, he murmured. Emily looked over from the sink, drying her hands. What made you stop? He shrugged. Life. Noise. Too many reasons. None of them good. He brought the harmonica to his lips and blew gently, just a warm-up note. It wavered in the air like smoke. Then, without another word, he began to play. It wasn't a performance. No grand gestures. Just a simple, aching tune that rose and fell like breath, tender nostalgic, full of some unnamed longing. Emily paused in the doorway, dish towel, forgotten in her hands. Something about the melody. It wasn't just beautiful. It was familiar. Her body stilled. Her eyes widened. She didn't know the name of the song, but she knew its shape, the way it curled around her heart, the way it reached into the buried parts of her, and gently tapped. Images flashed in her mind. A glass hallway, a pair of black heels walking quickly, a soft voice saying, "Don't forget your notes for the boardroom." Then another flash. The same melody played on a grand piano in a hotel ballroom, people standing applauding. She was on a stage, speaking, confident, polished. The lights in her mind flickered, then dimmed again. She swayed slightly where she stood. Jack noticed. Emily. She blinked, trying to focus. That song. Where did you learn it? Jack lowered the harmonica, his eyes softening. Old Navy buddy used to play it on the bass. Said it was from some fancy tech gala he once snuck into. I guess it stuck with me. Emily sat down slowly at the kitchen table, hands trembling. I think I was there, she whispered. I saw that stage, the music, people clapping. I was wearing heels, talking to someone important. Jack stayed quiet. He didn't press. He just let her speak. And I remember a name she added, eyes wide now. I think it's mine. Jack leaned forward. Ava, she said, voice barely audible. Ava Lynn. The room held its breath. Even the clock on the wall seemed to pause between seconds. Jack leaned back slowly, letting the name settle between them. I saw a book at the bookstore yesterday, she continued, with that name on the cover. And the face, it looked like me. Jack nodded, his expression unreadable. Do you believe me? She asked. He met her gaze directly. I believe you remember something. That matters. But what if I'm that woman, that CEO? What if I have responsibilities? Stockholders, employees, people who think I'm dead? Jack didn't look away. Then I guess the next question is, do you want to be her again? Emily opened her mouth, then closed it. Because the truth was, she didn't know. She had lived these past few weeks without wealth, without recognition, without pressure, and for the first time in her adult life, she'd felt seen, heard, loved not for her resume, but for her presence. There was a kind of power in that, the kind no title could offer. She looked at Jack. You haven't changed, she said quietly. Should I have? No. That's what's strange. You helped me before you knew anything. You cooked for me. Let me sleep on your couch. Trusted me with your daughter. I helped a person, Jack said simply. Not a job title. Emily swallowed hard. You don't want anything from me? Jack shook his head. No. Not even answers. Jack offered a small smile. You've already given me something better, what you let Mia believe in people again. Emily looked away, blinking rapidly. Outside the window, the streetlight flickered and steadied. The world continued unaware of the storm passing quietly inside her. She stood walking slowly toward Jack. Then, before she could talk herself out of it, she sat beside him on the armchair, their shoulders touching. play it again?" she asked softly. Jack raised the harmonica, and this time when the music filled the room, Emily closed her eyes and let herself remember not who she was, but who she wanted to become. Saturday morning arrived with soft sunlight peeking through the apartment windows and the smell of toast burning slightly in the toaster. Jack muttered a curse under his breath, trying to save the last piece of sourdough, while Mia danced barefoot across the linoleum floor, humming off-key and chasing her stuffed unicorn Cloudy with a spoon like it was a wild animal. Emily sat quietly at the small table, her fingers wrapped around a mug of tea, watching the father-daughter scene with a distant smile. But inside, she was anything but quiet. The melody Jack had played 2 nights ago still rang in her ears. The name Ava Lynn had returned again in her dreams, spoken in voices she almost recognized. And the book. That book in the bookstore window. The one with her face on it. She hadn't gone back. She hadn't needed to. Because ever since that night, everything in her body buzzed with unfinished memory. After breakfast, while Jack and Mia went to the farmer's market, Emily stayed behind. She stood at the mirror in the bathroom, the same one she used to avoid. This time, she wiped the steam off with the palm of her hand and stared at her own face. Her hair, still freshly cut, framed her cheekbones gently. Her skin was clearer now, her eyes not as hollow. But the woman in the mirror was still a mystery. She tilted her head. There, a scar near her left temple. Small, almost invisible beneath the hairline. Faint. Old. She touched it carefully, and like a gust of wind blowing through an open door, memory flooded in, fast, fragmented, and full of static. A yacht. White tablecloths. Laughter, wine glasses clinking. Then panic. Water. Screaming. A crash. Fire. Silence. Emily gasped and clutched the sink. Her knees trembled, and she steadied herself with both hands, heart racing. That was it. The boating accident. The headlines. She had been on that yacht. She had fallen. Or jumped, she wasn't sure. But somehow she had ended up alone ashore, wet and barefoot in the back of an alley near the Carlton West. Her hands shook. She stumbled into the living room and grabbed Jack's laptop from the shelf. It was old, took forever to boot, but she needed answers. When the browser finally opened, she typed Ava Lynn. There were hundreds of results. Business profiles, stock market impact updates, video clips of interviews where her own face stared back at her with sharp intelligence and perfect composure. Emily stared at herself. It was like watching a ghost that wore her face, but not her soul. Her corporate photos looked pristine, robotic, full of achievement, but empty of life. She didn't recognize the woman on the screen. Not really. But the world did. When Jack and Mia returned, Emily was still on the couch holding the laptop like it was evidence in a crime scene. Jack entered with a bag of apples and a baguette under his arm. He took one look at her and slowed. "You okay?" She looked up, expression unreadable. "I know who I am," she said quietly. Jack didn't say a word. He set the groceries down gently and sat beside her. "I'm Ava Lynn, founder and CEO of one of the largest health tech companies on the East Coast. Net worth somewhere in the billions, apparently. I've given TED Talks. I've shaken hands with presidents. She trailed off. "I've had my face on magazines I never bothered to read. But I don't remember the last time someone made me tea when I was sad." Jack nodded, thoughtful. "What are you going to do?" he asked. Emily looked at the screen, then at Mia, who was now lining up crayons in a perfect rainbow on the rug. "I don't know." Jack leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Do you feel like her?" She shook her head. "I feel like both. Or neither." He smiled softly. "That makes sense. You're not going to try to push me back to that world." "No," Jack said simply. Because I think the hardest part of losing yourself is that people rush you to remember, instead of letting you rediscover. Emily blinked back tears. Why are you like this? He gave a quiet chuckle. Bad knees, 3 tours, and a daughter who believes everyone has light in them if you just give it time. That night, as Mia snored lightly from her fort of pillows, Jack poured 2 cups of tea and handed one to Emily on the balcony. The stars peeked out between the city haze. The noise was distant enough to be soothing. I might need to go back, Emily said, after a long silence. Not now, but eventually. If only to close the loop. Jack nodded. You will when you're ready. She looked at him, eyes shimmering. But I want to say something first. Jack turned. Emily took a shaky breath. If the world expects me to be a giant, I want you to know, I only remembered who I was because someone treated me like a person, not a name, not a ghost, not a problem to be solved. Jack didn't respond with words. He simply lifted his cup toward her in a quiet toast. To remembering the right parts, he said. Emily clinked her mug against his heart, full of ache and clarity, and for the first time since she washed up on that sidewalk, she didn't feel lost anymore. The first sign came on a Tuesday. A black SUV pulled up in front of Carlton West just before noon. It wasn't unusual to see expensive vehicles at the hotel, but this one didn't belong to a guest, or a vendor, or even the occasional celebrity who dropped in for privacy and polished service. This car had tinted windows, government plates, and when the doors opened, 2 sharply dressed men in dark suits stepped out, followed by a woman in heels and a crisp navy suit. Her voice was clipped, efficient. We're here regarding the Ava Lynn case. Marta from housekeeping overheard and nearly dropped her mop. By 1:00 p.m., the news had already reached Jack. He was fixing a leaky faucet in room 4 when his radio buzzed. You need to come to the manager's office, now. He didn't ask why. He wiped his hands, packed his tools, and headed downstairs. The air in the hallway was different. Electric, suspicious, as if truth itself was about to walk out from the shadows and demand attention. Inside the office, Douglas Brenner was sweating more than usual. Jack. He began, not meeting his eyes. These folks are with the missing persons unit, and a representative from Ava Lynn Technologies. The woman in the navy suit gave a sharp nod. Jack's pulse quickened. They showed him a photo Emily polished and sleek in a professional portrait. The hair was longer, the makeup more pronounced, the suit perfectly tailored. Have you seen this woman? Jack looked at the photo, then at the investigators. Then carefully, he nodded. They didn't arrest him. They didn't accuse him of anything. But the implication hovered like smoke. You brought her into your home, the woman asked. Without notifying the authorities, she was terrified. Cold, couldn't speak. Jack replied, voice steady. She didn't even know her own name. She wasn't a missing CEO. She was just a human being. The woman narrowed her eyes. You knew who she was eventually, though. Jack didn't answer. Because it wasn't a question, it was a trap. By 5:00 p.m., Jack had been suspended from the hotel. Not fired yet, but told in vague language that he needed to step back while the situation is investigated. When he arrived back at the apartment, his shoulders carried the weight of quiet fury. Emily was already standing in the doorway, her face pale. They came to the hotel. Jack dropped his keys into the dish by the door. I know. I never meant for this to happen, she whispered. Jack looked at her. Really looked at her. I believe you. Her voice cracked. I just wanted a little more time. I didn't think it would unravel like this. Jack's jaw tightened. They suspended me. Emily gasped. What? No, Jack. I'll be fine, he said too quickly. We'll figure it out. That night, the apartment felt different. Not cold, but hollow. Mia noticed. "Why aren't we having spaghetti night?" she asked softly, poking at her cereal dinner. Jack ruffled her hair. "Change of plans, sweet pea." Emily tried to help clean up, but everything she touched felt breakable, now fragile, with guilt. Jack didn't stop her, but neither did he look at her much. When Mia went to bed, Emily lingered in the kitchen. "I should go," she said finally. Jack leaned against the wall. "Where?" "I don't know. Back to my life. Or what's left of it, Lent." "Jack, I never meant to cause trouble. For you. For Mia. I didn't even know who I was when I showed up." Jack sighed. "And I didn't care who you were." Emily's voice was shaking. "But they did." "Yeah, they did." She stepped closer. "Say something real. Please." He looked up. His eyes were tired. "You came into our lives like a storm, and I let you stay, not because you were Ava Lynn, or a headline, or someone the world missed." He paused. "I let you stay because my daughter smiled at you like she'd known you forever, and because I saw a woman who needed to be treated like she mattered, even when she couldn't remember why." Tears slipped down Emily's cheeks. Jack looked away. "You don't owe us anything. But you don't have to disappear again either." The next morning, Emily was gone. The bed was made. The sink was clean. Cloudy the unicorn had been placed gently beside Mia's pillow. Jack stood in the doorway for a long time, staring at the quiet space she'd left behind. Mia woke, rubbed her eyes, and looked around. "Where's Miss Sunshine?" Jack crouched beside her, voice tender. She had to go take care of something important. Mia thought about it. Then she picked up the unicorn and hugged it tightly. "She'll come back," she said, with the certainty only children can muster. Jack said nothing, but in his chest something cracked quietly. Not anger, not even sadness. Just absence. And yet deep down, he hoped Mia was right. Because you don't just forget a woman who came back to life in your living room. The media swarmed the front steps of Evelyn Technologies headquarters, like bees to a dropped hive. Cameras, flashbulbs, reporters shouting over one another, clutching microphones like torches. The marble steps hadn't seen this much action since the company went public 5 years earlier. Is she really back? Will she address the boardroom takeover rumors? Was it all a publicity stunt? Inside, the air was chilled and humming with pressure. Employees stood shoulder to shoulder along the perimeter of the main hall. Security tightened their formation. The CEO's podium stood at the center, bathed in sterile white lighting. Behind the curtain, Ava Lynn formerly. Emily always. Emily stood alone. No assistant. No makeup artist. No publicist. Just a woman in a navy blouse and slacks, her freshly cut hair brushing just above her shoulders. Around her neck, hanging from a simple chain, was Mia's wooden comb, worn smooth at the edges. Ms. Lynn, a young staffer, peeked behind the curtain. "They're ready for you." Ava turned slowly. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes were calm. For the first time in her adult life, she wasn't stepping onto a stage to prove anything. She stepped into the light. The room erupted in flashes. She raised one hand, not for power, but for peace. "Thank you all for coming," she said. Her voice carried not with force, but with quiet certainty. "I won't take much of your time. I know there's been speculation. Worry. Headlines. I understand." She paused. "You're expecting me to return with a long explanation, or a triumphant speech, or at least a polished strategy for what comes next." She let that linger, then softly added, "But the truth is, I don't have one." A murmur rippled through the room. Ava looked out across the sea of eyes, some anxious, some skeptical, some hopeful. "I lost myself," she said simply. "Not just in the accident, but long before that. I was living to win, to build, to control. And in the process, I forgot how to just be." Another pause, longer this time. While the world searched for me, I was sitting on a couch in a third-floor apartment drinking chamomile tea and learning how to fold laundry again. I was coloring with a child, listening to harmonica music, peeling potatoes, some laughter, some confusion. And it was in those moments, quiet, ordinary ones, that I found the part of me that success had drowned out the human part. At the edge of the crowd, Ava noticed a few employees blinking fast. One wiped her eyes discreetly. Even the stone-faced head of legal looked slightly disarmed. "I stand here today not to reclaim a title," Ava continued, "but to redefine it. Because leadership isn't about being first or loudest or feared. It's about being kind. It's about seeing the invisible. And sometimes, it's about letting someone else make you a cup of tea when you're too broken to ask." She reached up and held the comb at her neck between two fingers. This belonged to a child who never asked who I was. She just knew I was worth something even when I didn't. A hush fell over the room. I'm still figuring out what comes next. But I know this Avalyn Technologies will move forward with humanity at its center. Not because it looks good on a mission statement, but because I now understand what it feels like to be on the other side of silence, and how much it means when someone breaks that silence with kindness. She stepped back from the podium, eyes steady. "I'm not back. I'm becoming." The applause started small, one employee in the back, then another. Within seconds, it swelled into something thunderous. But Ava didn't stay for it. She turned, walked off stage through the hallway of executives waiting to greet her with congratulatory smiles, and kept walking. That evening, the press called her a revolutionary, an icon, a survivor. But none of that mattered, because all she could think about was a small apartment with peeling paint and a little girl's drawing still taped to the fridge. Across town, Jack sat on the stoop outside his building, sipping coffee from a chipped mug. Mia played nearby with sidewalk chalk, drawing smiley suns and houses with crooked chimneys. "Do you think she's okay?" Mia asked, coloring in a window. Jack nodded slowly. "Yeah, I do." Mia paused. "Do you miss her?" Jack didn't answer right away. Instead, he took another sip, then looked up at the sky. "I miss who I was when she was here," he said. "But people change us. That's the best thing they can do." Mia drew a heart beside the house and wrote "Miss Sunshine" in big purple letters. "She changed me too," she said. Jack smiled, and somewhere in the back of his mind he wondered, would she ever come back? Or was she now too far above them, swallowed by the world that once nearly broke her? He didn't know, but he hoped, because some stories don't end at the press conference. They begin again quietly, gently, where no one's looking. The days passed in small, quiet ways. Jack returned to his shifts at Carlton West after the investigation concluded. No charges, no write-ups, just a few awkward nods from co-workers and a clipped apology from manager Brenner that barely counted as words. "Looks like your instincts were not entirely misplaced," Brenner muttered, staring at his coffee. She was Ava Lynn. Jack nodded once. She was Emily first. And that was the end of it. Back at the apartment, the rhythms resumed, but they weren't the same. Mia still made pancake faces on Saturday mornings. Jack still fixed squeaky door hinges and unclogged the tub like clockwork. But something had shifted. A note missing from the chord. Sometimes Jack caught himself turning his head too quickly expecting to hear her voice. Or reaching into the cupboard and finding the teacup she always used, and pausing. Or noticing that Cloudy the unicorn was no longer sleeping on the couch pillow. Mia didn't talk about it much, but she started writing little notes and hiding them around the apartment. Notes like, "Miss Sunshine will come back. Maybe for my birthday. Dad, maybe we can go visit her tower. Do you think she still likes grilled cheese?" Jack never moved the notes. He left them where they were, because even though he didn't say it out loud, he missed her too. One evening, after Mia had gone to bed, Jack opened the drawer beside his bed and took out the notebook he hadn't touched in years. It was an old brown journal, edges curled pages, yellowed with time. He'd used it during deployment to write letters. He never sent letters to his wife, to his parents, to the version of himself he wasn't sure still existed. Now, he flipped to a clean page, took a deep breath, and began to write. "Dear Emily, I don't know if this letter will ever find you. I don't even know if you're still the same person who slept on my couch and burned the toast twice in one morning. But I figured you should know a few things. First, Mia still talks about you like you're her imaginary friend who went on vacation. She draws you into every picture, always with sunshine above your head. Second, I haven't changed the pillows on the couch. They still smell a little like lavender and rain. I keep telling myself I'll wash them next week. It's been 3 weeks. Third, you didn't break anything by leaving, but you did leave something behind. A shape. A space that still fits only you. Not because we need you to complete us. Mia and I have been okay, before we'll be okay again. But because you reminded us what it felt like to let someone in and be better for it. That's rare. I don't know what your days look like now. Maybe you're wearing power suits again. Maybe you're in a boardroom while I'm unclogging a hotel sink. That's okay. Just don't forget the girl who gave you the wooden comb. And don't forget the man who gave you silence without expectation. You don't owe us anything. But if you ever find yourself walking down our block again, there's a seat at the table. Still yours, Jack." He closed the notebook and stared at the page. The words weren't perfect. They didn't wrap anything in a bow. But they were true. And maybe that was enough. The next morning, Jack slipped the notebook back in the drawer, poured Mia a bowl of cereal, and packed her backpack like he always did. Life didn't stop for heartache, but it made space for it. Later that day, Jack passed the bookstore window again. The same one where Emily had once seen her own name and flinched. Now there was a different display, Ava Lynn's return. Not just a CEO, a story of becoming. He didn't stop to read it. He just looked, once nodded to himself, and kept walking. Because he didn't need a story written in headlines. He already knew the real version. It had been written in teacups, laughter harmonica songs, and silence. And in the small, unmistakable feeling that some goodbyes weren't the end of something, but the quiet beginning of its return. The community center smelled faintly of popcorn and floor wax. It was Community Kindness Day, a once-a-month event organized by local veterans and neighborhood volunteers. Free meals, free haircuts, and a table with donated jackets and warm socks for anyone who needed them. Jack had signed up to cut hair again. He hadn't touched his shears in weeks, but when the flyer showed up in Mia's school folder, "We need barbers, even part-time ones." Mia had looked up at him and said simply, "She'd want you to do it." So here he was, folding chair, clippers, apron tied over his old army jacket, scissors that still bore the faded initials from his Navy days. He worked quietly like always, gentle with the elderly patient with the children, his touch steady, his voice kind. But inside, he carried a dull ache, the ache of something unfinished, something waiting. By mid-afternoon, the line had slowed. The last person, a wiry teenager with headphones, thanked Jack with a shy nod and jogged off toward the food tables. Jack wiped down his chair stretched his back, and looked up, and froze. Because across the room, standing in the doorway in a plain wool coat and soft gray sweater, was Emily. Not Ava Lynn, not the woman from the magazines, just Emily. Her hair was still short, tucked behind her ears. Her hands were tucked into her coat pockets, and around her neck, glinting in the low light, was the wooden comb Mia had once handed her, like a sacred offering. She didn't move at first. Neither did Jack. Time stalled. Then, slowly, Emily walked forward, stopping just shy of the folding chair. Jack's throat tightened. "You came back." "I never really left," she said softly. "Just had to remember why I wanted to return." Jack nodded once, unable to find the words. Emily pulled something from her coat pocket and held it out. The scissors, his old barber shears. "I think these belong to you," she said, placing them in his hands gently. "You left them wrapped in the towel I used. I found them when I unpacked." Jack took them with both hands. "I didn't mean to," I know she whispered, "but I kept them anyway. I guess I wasn't ready to let go." A beat passed. 2 heartbeats. 3. "Are you here for a haircut?" he asked, voice nearly breaking. Emily smiled, eyes shining. "No, not this time." Jack chuckled quietly, then gestured to the folding chair. "Still warm, though." She shook her head, stepping closer. "I'm here for something else." Across the room, Mia spotted her. She'd been helping stack paper cups and pass out fruit snacks. But the moment she saw Emily, everything else fell away. She sprinted across the room, her arms open wide. "Miss Sunshine." Emily dropped to one knee just in time for Mia to barrel into her, laughing and crying all at once. "I knew you'd come back." Mia whispered into her shoulder. "I just knew it." Emily hugged her tightly, pressing her face into Mia's soft hair. "I missed you," she murmured. "Every single day." Jack looked away, blinking fast, but he couldn't keep the smile from spreading across his face. Later, after the last chair was folded and the leftover sandwiches packed away, the 3 of them stood outside under the soft gold light of the late afternoon sun. "So," Jack began, clearing his throat, "what happens now?" Emily looked up at him. "I stepped down," she said. "Avalyn Technologies will continue without me, stronger, I hope. I gave them a new mission, and they agreed. But I realized the only title I really missed was being someone Mia trusted, and someone you respected." Jack swallowed hard, and he asked. Emily smiled gently. "And I'm hoping you still have room for a woman who doesn't own a yacht, but knows how to cook garlic bread without burning it this time." Mia grinned. "We never had enough garlic bread." Jack looked between the 2 of them. Then quietly he said, "We never had enough of you either." They walked home together, the way they had once walked to school and the market, and back again. This time, not as strangers, not as guests, but as something that felt like family. And when they reached the apartment building, Jack paused before opening the door. He looked at Emily. "You sure?" She took his hand. "I'm not the same woman who got lost," she said. "I'm the woman who was found." Jack opened the door, his heart wide. Inside, the couch still had the extra pillow. The tea kettle was still warm. And on the fridge, Mia had taped a new drawing. 3 stick figures. A small house. And the words, "Home means the people who wait for you." It had only been a few days, yet the rhythm of their little home felt different. Not louder, not chaotic, just fuller. Emily wasn't staying in a hotel suite anymore. She was sleeping in the guest room across from Mia. As though Mia had knocked on her door each night, always with the same hopeful request. "Can I read you a bedtime story tonight, Miss Sunshine?" And each night, Emily had said yes. Tonight was no different. Mia had picked a tattered copy of Charlotte's Web. She curled up beside Emily, head on her shoulder, reading with the slow determination of a third grader. Her voice wobbled a little when she got to the chapter where Charlotte wrote, "Some pig in her web." Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. It wasn't just the book. It was this, the hum of a heater, the rustle of pages, the soft glow of a dollar store nightlight. This was the kind of warmth she never knew she'd needed. No boardroom could manufacture it. No quarterly report could predict it. In the kitchen, Jack stirred a pot of chili. His hand moved slowly, thoughtfully. Something his former Navy buddies would call Dad mode activated. He'd been quiet all day, more thoughtful than usual. Earlier that afternoon, he'd taken Emily on a walk around the neighborhood. No agenda, just sidewalks and stories. How the corner store once had a cat named Meatloaf. How the diner down the block made terrible coffee, but great peach pie. How the local librarian always gave Mia extra bookmarks, even when she forgot to return books on time. Emily had listened, smiled, and asked questions. Really listened. But what lingered in Jack's mind wasn't her laughter or even her thoughtful silence. It was something smaller, simpler. She knew how to walk at his pace. Not ahead, not behind, with him. That night they ate dinner at the small round table by the window. The table only had 2 chairs when Emily first came. Now it had 3. Mia insisted on setting the table herself. She folded the paper napkins into triangle shapes and placed a plastic flower in the jelly jar as a centerpiece. When Emily sat down, Jack noticed the hesitation in her hands. She still wasn't used to being served, or welcomed, or expected. So he pulled out the last can of sparkling water from the fridge and set it beside her plate. "No brand name," he said, "but Mia swears it tastes fancy." Emily grinned. "It does, and the bubbles tickle." They ate. They laughed. They passed around second helpings. Mia dropped chili on her shirt and declared it a flavor badge. And then, between bites, Emily grew quiet. She looked at Jack, then at Mia, then back at Jack. "I need to tell you something," she said. The room stilled. Jack set down his spoon. Mia blinked. Emily took a breath. "When I disappeared, when I got lost, I wasn't just walking away from a meeting. I was walking away from everything I thought made me who I was. The company, the money, the power. But the truth is, I didn't even know who I was to begin with." Jack nodded slowly. "I think a lot of us don't, until something stops us long enough to listen." Emily smiled faintly. "Well, I listened, and I heard you, both of you, every time you told me I was safe, every time you gave me space, every time Mia hugged me without asking who I was." Mia beamed. "Hugs don't need resumes." They all laughed. Then Emily's smile faltered slightly. "I've stepped down from the board permanently. I gave the foundation my shares. I don't want to go back." Jack looked at her surprised, but only for a second. "What do you want instead?" She looked around the tiny apartment, at the worn wooden floor, at the steam on the window, at the child who had given her back her name. "I want to learn how to be someone's neighbor, someone's friend. Maybe." She glanced down shyly. "Someone's family." Jack's voice was soft. "That sounds like a full-time job." "I'm ready for it," she whispered. Later that evening, after Mia had fallen asleep with her arms wrapped around a stuffed otter and a half-open book on her chest, Emily found herself in the living room with Jack. They sat in silence for a while. No TV, no music, just the distant hum of the city outside. Jack finally turned toward her. "You still thinking about running?" he asked. Emily shook her head. "Not anymore. I've already arrived." He reached across the small couch and took her hand. No kiss. Not yet. just fingers finally intertwining. Outside, snow began to fall, soft, hesitant flakes, dusting the windowsill like powdered sugar. Inside, 3 toothbrushes now sat in the cup by the sink, 3 shoes near the door, and 3 lives no longer waiting to begin, but already unfolding one warm evening at a time. Spring had arrived in soft, silent waves. The apartment window, once frosted and gray, now welcomed golden morning light that danced on the kitchen floor. Birds chirped from the tree outside, and the world felt like it had taken a long, gentle breath. Jack stood in the tiny backyard, a blanket of grass beneath his boots, an old flannel shirt rolled at the sleeves. A folding chair sat in the middle of the yard, the same one he'd used for years when giving Mia her Saturday haircuts. Today, that chair was for Emily. She stepped outside slowly, a mug of herbal tea in her hand, wearing a simple sundress that fluttered just below her knees. Her hair, thicker now, longer than the night he first met her, shimmered in the light. "I don't need a haircut," she said, her smile teasing. Jack raised an eyebrow. "Maybe not, but I owe you one." She laughed, then looked down at the chair, realizing the deeper meaning in the moment. It was full circle. She nodded and sat. Jack carefully draped a towel over her shoulders and gently brushed her hair back with his fingers. His hands, once calloused from war and work, now moved with a reverence born from months of healing forgiveness and love. He didn't cut anything that day. He just combed. And she closed her eyes. Mia watched from the porch steps, her knees tucked under her chin, holding her sketch pad. She was drawing them. Her dad, her Miss Sunshine, and the backyard that had witnessed so many small miracles. Emily glanced at her and smiled. "What are you drawing, sweet girl?" "You," Mia replied, "with hearts around your head." Jack chuckled. That accurate Emily didn't answer. She just reached for his hand and held it. That evening, Jack took Emily and Mia to the community garden. The place was blooming sunflowers, herbs, tomatoes, climbing their stakes like curious children. Jack's neighbors waved at them as they passed. A few stopped to say hello to Emily, now familiar and loved. One older woman named Dolores whispered, "She's the one from the papers, right?" "The billionaire." Jack smiled. "She's Emily." Dolores grinned. "That's what matters." Later, they walked downtown to the cafe where Jack had once fixed a broken sink in exchange for pie. Emily had donated enough to renovate the whole place, but no one ever mentioned that. They just called her our sunshine, and that was enough. They ordered 3 slices of strawberry shortcake and sat at a corner booth with a foggy window and a squeaky bench. Mia slid in first. "Daddy, yeah, are we a family now?" Jack looked at Emily. Emily looked back. Jack's voice was steady. "We've been one for a while. We just didn't know it." A few weeks later, something extraordinary happened. It wasn't a public announcement, not a televised interview, just a letter. Handwritten. From Emily. She sent it to every employee of her former company. Thousands of them. From engineers to janitors. From secretaries to regional managers. The letter told the story not of the woman she had been, but of the woman she was becoming. She wrote about how she had been found not by accident, but by kindness. By a single dad who gave a stranger a haircut in a parking lot. By a little girl who offered bedtime stories instead of questions. By a world that healed when someone dared to slow down. She ended it with a simple line. If you ever find yourself lost, look for the people who don't ask who you are, but how you're feeling. That's where you begin again. One afternoon in early summer, Jack took Mia to the barber shop. She wanted a short bob like Mommy's. He didn't correct her. He just smiled and said, "You got it, kiddo." Emily waited outside holding a small flower she picked along the sidewalk. She had been accepted into a teacher training program, something she never imagined doing, but now couldn't imagine not doing. She wanted to help kids like Mia. Kids like she used to be, wondering if kindness was real, if safety could exist. Now she knew. Their evenings became rituals. Dinner at the round table, walks through the neighborhood, story time under shared blankets. Some nights Jack played guitar, again slow, soulful songs from his Navy days. And on one special night, under a sky scattered with stars, Emily joined him on the porch. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I don't miss the penthouse," she whispered. Jack looked up at the stars. "I used to think I had to keep Mia safe with walls and rules. But turns out all she ever needed was to see me choose love over fear." Emily closed her eyes. "Me too." The next morning, Mia taped her newest drawing to the fridge. It showed 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. She had written 3 names in crayon beneath each one. Dad. Me. Sunshine. Emily saw it and froze. Tears welled up uninvited. Jack wrapped his arms around her from behind. "I guess you've been promoted," he whispered. She laughed through her tears. "To what home? We'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Tell us in the comments below. It warms our hearts to see this beautiful community growing from every corner of the world. If this story touched you, please consider subscribing for more inspiring tales like this. Stories that remind us all that kindness still matters, and love can find us when we least expect it. Thank you so much for watching. We're grateful to have you here truly. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other.